Hi, so I'm Kathy Giunta. I'm the newly appointed Director of Resource Recovery Policy within the New South Wales EPA. I'm here to talk to you about the decision that was made last October. We've been criticised on two fronts mainly, with a number of sub-fronts within that. One of them is the decision itself, and the other is the process of going about making the decision and communicating it. So I'm hoping that this presentation goes some way to providing clarity where I can on both of those fronts, given the confidential nature of much of the work. I'm not here to say that the EPA has executed anything perfectly, but to explain, I guess, the circumstances as much as I can around the decision and where we have gone since then and where we're looking to go. And I guess to say that we hear you. We invite you to keep talking to us and to engage with us to collaborate towards a solution. So that is just my quick preamble, and I will do a very quick shot of what AWT and MWOO is, because it is a world, like most in waste, that is full of acronyms. Although I'm sure most of you in the room already know this much better than I do. So the alternative waste industry emerged in New South Wales really around 20 years ago. And in New South Wales, when we talk about alternative waste technology, we're really talking about mechanical, biological treatment, not the full gamut of what's included in AWT overseas. So in New South Wales, AWT is effectively aiming to create an alternative to direct landfilling of general waste, of the red bin. The AWT operators in New South Wales use different processes to each other, and they've all been operating for quite different lengths of time. I was out at Biomass yesterday. They've been operating there for about 13 years. But in very broad terms, what they do is accept red lid bin waste. They sort that waste to remove the large physical contaminants and whatever resources can be recovered, and then they treat the resulting fraction by recycling the organics in there. This process produces an organic-rich material known as mixed waste organic outputs, or what we're calling MWOO. In New South Wales, we started regulating this industry in 2010, and it has now expanded to the point where there are 4 AWT industry operators: Veolia, Suez, Global Renewables and Biomass. They operate 5 facilities: Woodlawn, Kemps Creek, Eastern Creek, Raymond Terrace and Coffs Harbour. And they service 28 councils in metropolitan and regional areas, including Sydney, Parramatta and right here in Coffs Harbour. These councils are geographically spread throughout the state. 8 of them are in SS Rock, 6 in Nes Rock, 5 in Wes Rock. 3 of them are the old MacRock councils: Macarthur Strategic Waste Alliance, 3 from Midwaste, 1 within the Illawarra Shoalhaven Joint Organisation, 1 from the Hunter and 1 unaligned. And not all of the councils within any of those regional waste groups are all signed up, but just to give you a flavour of where they're all coming from. The AWT processing itself results in diversion from landfill of about 50% biomass of the incoming waste from these councils, through a combination of extracting those recyclables, the moisture loss through the process, and then the constructive use of the MWOO. So it has provided really good resource recovery rates for those councils for a long period of time, some longer than others. In the 12 months from November 2018 to October this year, it's anticipated that those operators will produce around 160,000 tonne of MWOO from approximately 500,000 tonne of inputs through the front door. This is not an insignificant amount of material. Within this 12-month period, around 60% of that would have been applied to mining rehabilitation sites, the remainder to agriculture, but previously the inverse ratio was more true. Most of it, 60 to 70%, was going to agriculture. Okay, so in 2010, the evidence supported creating an exemption under the Resource Recovery Framework. However, both the EPA and industry, I'm sure Ron will talk a bit about this in his presentation, acknowledged that there was more work to be done, more research that was needed. And so we started to regulate with some fairly strict controls at that time, which included that it wasn't allowed, we weren't allowing any application within urban and domestic situations. In certain agricultural situations, you could apply at 10 tonne per hectare, and that included some withholding periods as well for that material. In the mining rehab space, you could apply up to 140 tonne per hectare. But to fill the knowledge gaps, we simultaneously, or within the next year, received some funding from the Environmental Trust in 2011 to keep going with the research that we knew needed to happen. And so over the next 6 years, from 2011 till 2017, there were 6 separate and independent studies conducted by academics from a range of organisations, including the University of New England, CSIRO, University of Sydney, other government agencies including DPI and OEH. All of this material will eventually be published through academic journals. So I've heard that at least 2 of them have had articles accepted into academic journals, and as soon as they are released, we'll let everybody know so that you can go and have a look at them. The studies examined a range of aspects, including impacts on physical contaminants in MWOO, the toxicity of MWOO leachate, and the effects of MWOO on a range of different soil types. So we were looking at a whole range of factors there with this research. This entire research program was complete in August 2017. The EPA at that time then established an independent technical advisory committee in September 2017, which would have a look at all of the findings across those 6 research projects and provide some advice to the EPA and recommendations as to what, if anything, we needed to do to adjust our resource recovery orders and exemptions in this area. The members of the TAC were 5 of them from interstate and 1 from New South Wales to ensure independence. And they produced a report for us, which we received late May 2018, so almost a year ago. This is the decision. I thought I'd just put the decision up there. This is the exact wording of what went out. So following comprehensive independent studies, the New South Wales EPA stopped the restricted use of mixed waste organic output on agricultural land on the 26th of October last year, and ceased its use in plantation forests and mining rehabilitation until further controls could be considered. And that is the work that's being done now. So the TAC report found, essentially what the TAC report did was tell us that at a rate of 10 tonne per hectare, the MWOO was not providing a benefit. It was not fit for purpose in that it was meant to be a soil conditioner, but at 10 tonne per hectare, none of the research was supporting that that's what it was doing. In order to increase or create some benefit, we would have to lift the amount that we were able to apply, and if we did that, then we would simultaneously increase the environmental risks associated with what was in that MWOO material. So when you have the research on the one hand that was talking about benefits and environmental risks and health risks, which are the 3 tests of the resource recovery framework, and then you match that against the research, essentially you come to the conclusion that these tests are no longer being met. And that was the reason that the call was made. So we did not make this call on our own, of course, or without any consultation. We spoke to many people, including, firstly, industry. So we started talking to the AWT industry about this, and of course they were aware of all of this research throughout the years. We started talking to them in about the August of last year, a few months before the decision became public, because we needed to gather information on a number of fronts. We needed to socialise the results with them and talk to them about what we needed to do. We were also talking to other agencies who are affected by MWOO and by this decision, and they include New South Wales Health, Department of Primary Industries, Planning, the Food Authority and others. We also, at this time, commissioned a HERA, which is a Human Health and Environmental Risk Assessment of past activities. So the interim report findings within this HERA indicated that at the agricultural land application rate of 10 tonne per hectare, it was unlikely to be presenting any health risk to the general public. So in terms of the resource recovery framework, where we have the 3 tests of providing a benefit and being fit for purpose, no risk to human health, low risk to the environment, the human health risk is okay, but the risk to the environment and the providing a benefit or being an actual soil conditioner, those 2 tests weren't being met. So, what did we do? Our immediate priorities, of course, were to minimise disruption to curbside services. And of course, you'll all remember the climate at the time. We had China's national sword hit in the January-February of this same year. When the TAC report came out in May, we were all still reeling from that, and to some extent we were all still working through the impacts of China national sword. So we had threats to our yellow bin system, and here we were now with a potential threat to the red bin. So this is the context of what was going on at this time. So the last thing we wanted to do was create any sort of disruption to the red lid bin services. We wanted to be able to support concerned farmers and landholders when this information went out. We needed to limit reductions to resource recovery rates and prevent any stockpiling of MWOO, and of course to reduce the impact, financial and otherwise, on industry and the affected councils. And so, as I mentioned, the CEO and the EPA were talking immediately with industry, socialising the findings and gathering a lot of information, and industry were fantastic and remain so in working with us and talking to us and providing us with ongoing information, and they're continuing to do that right now. We needed to know where this material had been applied over all of those years, every single site, where had it gone. That's a lot of information to gather. How can we ensure that curbside services will be able to continue? What were the short-term options? What could we do immediately right now to cause the least amount of disruption? And we needed to get a better understanding of the financial and operational situation so that we could apply what support we could in the most effective way. We're also talking to the other agencies who had their own concerns and fed into the whole process of conducting the HERA and so on. And from that, we made the decision in October and then came out with our Phase 1 support package, and this is what it included. There's a little bit of detail on there. We asked industry to keep on producing MWOO, and industry is still right now producing MWOO just as they always did. The benefits of this are, of course, that those facilities and the people who work at them can continue to operate and everything keeps moving, which would limit disruption. The bins continue to be collected, there is some resource recovery still going on, and there are some environmental benefits to be had from this action. We put in place a 12-month waste levy exemption for all of the existing MWOO processes. We've been providing them with funding every month to reimburse them for the costs of sending that MWOO to landfill, which is what they now do with that product in the interim. And we're also funding the removal of any stockpiles that are on agricultural land and getting that into landfill as well, because of course nobody is allowed to apply this material to land. We have been seeking a range of independent advice from all sorts of consultants and others, and working with industry and councils to receive that. And we've been running workshops, so we had a series of workshops in February with councils and industry talking about potential scenarios going forward, and we've been working through that and looking now at further scenarios. What we are doing now, which I'll go on to a bit more in the next slide, but essentially is working on a Phase 2 support package, but that will be dependent obviously on what the EPA's final regulatory position is going to be, and we're working towards having that out by mid this year. So this is a bit more detail on our current activity. We're having regular meetings with the AWT industry. The CEOs are all coming to meetings. They were happening once a fortnight, now about once a month. We are continuing to talk with affected councils, but not anywhere near enough, and I would really like to be doing a lot more of that. We've re-engaged Eltons, who are helping us with stakeholder engagement during Phase 1, to start actioning that, but I invite people to give me a call, contact the team. Let's keep talking. And of course the other agencies. So the other agencies who were involved right at the beginning have remained very involved. I've met with other agencies I think 3 times this week, and it's only Thursday, but they are very, very involved and working with us intensively to get as quickly as we can to a resolution so that we can all figure out what the new landscape is going to be and how we're going to move on. The research that's happening at the moment, so the Office of Chief Scientist and Engineer, as many of you in the room will probably know, are doing some follow-up work from the interim HERA, mostly around PBDEs. That work is just about wrapping up now, so we've got that work on track. The Human Health and Environmental Risk Assessment will be rerun once we have that final data in, and a range of other inputs that will feed into that. So we're looking at having that report by mid this year as well. And there's other work that we're doing, talking to industry and others about what is technically and financially feasible in terms of options into the future. We're looking at trends with MWOO in other jurisdictions and how the New South Wales situation compares or doesn't. We're also obviously talking to Molly Tregoning's team in the 20-year waste strategy, because of course their strategy won't come out for a while after we've made whatever the regulatory position is going to be on this. But of course we need to make sure that we produce certainty and not move again when we get to the 20-year waste strategy. So we are making sure that we keep those conversations going. And that's about it from me. The next steps, I think I've probably already talked them through. We're working very hard to finalise all of the relevant inputs that we need to to put a regulatory position up and out for consultation. We're aiming to issue this mid this year, and at the same time that we issue what the regulatory position, the draft regulatory position is, which we will get feedback from everybody on, we will also be pitching what the phase 2 support package might look like, because we want to consult on both of those things at the same time. If this is going to be the scenario, then what support do people need? And that support might include everything from infrastructure or education or a range of things that people might need to get support from the EPA on. We will be then considering those submissions, so we're aiming to have this out for consultation sort of July, August, and then we will roll out whatever the revised framework is, if it is going to be revised, in August and September this year. So that's the revised time frame that we're looking at. I can assure you that we understand the need to come to a landing as soon as possible so that we can provide certainty, but at the same time to balance that with making sure that we get it right, and also ensuring that we make this consistent, because of course there are ramifications and things for other resource recovery orders and exemptions, and we're feeling those too. So that's it for me. I'll be quiet now and I'll leave it to you to answer questions. My number and email is up there, and I truly do hope to hear more from everybody if there are questions or comments that you'd like to make that you don't want to do here. Thanks.